Hello everyone, Bashar here. So, as you know, I have been bombarding you guys with some videos based on this character. So, this character is probably the best damage in the game. It has its downsides, but it is very good in that regard. And I will be showcasing the build and probably will be doing a guide soon. But why am I doing all of these small videos, right? Short videos, in which I discuss a single thing only. So the reason for that is in the build guides that are around, right? This stuff is not really well explained, right? And sometimes you might have to beat your brains until you can find the answer. I had to, and that's why I'm doing these videos, because in a build guide that is like maybe 40 minutes long, uh, you might be skimming over the video and you might miss it. So that's why we have dedicated videos, and I will just refer to these videos, maybe just go over them in shortly when I'm doing the build guide. So anyway, let me get into it. So in this build, as you can see, I'm using a whopping 440 spirit, and this is rendered worse by not getting any spirit from the amulet and the chest, right? These are, very common sources of spirit for most characters. Zero spirit here and zero spirit here. So how do we get it done? So the funny thing is that I'm only getting spirit from one piece of equipment that I have, right? That's just one, and that's this helmet. So yeah, this helmet gives you 100 spirit. It can be corrupted to have like 120 spirit or so, a little maybe above it, and it can also get an enchant like all helmets that gives you somewhere between 20 to 30 spirit. I'm gonna suggest getting like something around 120 ish spirit here. Uh, and obviously, you want a +1 power charges, which I have referred to earlier on. Doesn't really matter. So, the only spirit that we get from our gear is this, right? We do not get any more spirit. That's why the 440 is a challenge, right? If I was able to use my amulet or my chest, right? From the chest, you can get something like 65, I think, from the amulet. If it's a solar amulet, you can go up to 65 as well, not counting in special items. So that would have been, I'm not going to say easy, but easier, right? So this is, pretty expensive, and I'm going to offer you a budget option. Budget is in air quotes, by the way, for those people that watch without the video. I'm guessing, right? Because then I'm getting scolded. This is not budget, blah blah, right? I know it's not budget, right? This is expensive stuff. Even this helmet is expensive. But there is one method that is cheaper to achieve. So the way that we go is this character is a shaman, and the reason that we go for shaman is this, right? Because otherwise the 440 is unachievable. So you leave your charm slots open and you get 40 spirit per, right? And what I'm using is this beautiful rite of passage, and I left my two other charm slots open, which hurts a lot, right? I definitely would have wanted the stun charm or a freeze charm, and I have even considered, putting one of those on and leaving this one out. But you know what? Which one am I going to leave out, right? Freeze and stun are both a problem, so I just go with neither. And if you are wondering if this causes deaths, yeah, big time, right? A huge problem. Anyway, that's where we get the 80 spirit. So we start off with 100 base from the campaign, 120 something from the helmet. We get 80 more from the shaman ascendancy, so that is 300, right? Still a major gap with 440 that we need to reach. And also another budget option is that 410 is acceptable as well. You do not need 440, you can go with 410. So the final piece of the puzzle, final two pieces of the puzzle is, you might have guessed this, you can use Grand Spectrum. These are obtained from Trial of Tsekimas after beating the final boss Zarok from the chest, right? You can rarely find these chests, and they will have a ruby or emerald or sapphire inside randomly. So you can have three of these total, right? All kinds of spectrum. You can do any combination of the three, and they will amplify each other, right? So the green ones give us 2% spirit per equipped, right? So if I equip three of them, that's going to give me 6% spirit per spectrum, and I'm allowed to have 3, so 18% spirit, right? But if you remember that we were on around 300s, 18% is not gonna do it, right? So here comes the big money spender, sadly. You go for an Against the Darkness with spirit on it, and as you can see, my secondary modifier is not great. It's acceptable, right? It does help, but it's not that good. So the problem is that these are worth about 600 divine these days. Yeah, just the spirit and a garbage modifier, right? So I got the least garbage. I mean, instead of reduce shock duration, I went for this one. Anything good, and it's gonna go thousands of divines. I mean, like extra damage or something. So you need this, right? Your 12 spirit is the maximum allowed. You want definitely one with a 12 spirit. You can save some divines maybe if you get an uncorrupted one with low spirit, and you could divine it to have 12 spirit. And so this is where the waste goes unreal. Not only you pay hundreds, not thousands, but hundreds of divines for the Against the Darkness. Now our sacrifice doesn't end there, so we do not have a proper slot for Against the Darkness. So what we do is we go for a From Nothing diamond, which takes up another jewel slot, right? And we want that From Nothing to synergize with Zealot's Oath, right? So Zealot's Oath is here. So everything in the range of Zealot's Oath we can assign without connecting to the tree, right? And we get everything in range of the Against the Darkness, which are sadly mighty garbage, right? They don't do anything. The biggest one is this one, right? And take a look at how laughable it is. 25% chance when I'm gaining power charges to gain additional power. The others are just nothing. So I'm sacrificing 2 jewel slots, right? And 6 skills to just get the spirit that I need, right? So that barely does it, right? 100 base from the campaign, 120 something from the helmet, that's 225, let's say, 80 from Shaman Ascendancy, right? This Sacred Flow of 305, and then 72 from Against the Darkness. This is not in range, even though it is scanned here. That's pretty frustrating. And so that adds up to 377 or so, and amplify it by 18% and you barely get there. But do not really skimp on the spirit here, right? 120 is gonna be a little bit risky, and when I say 440, I actually mean 441. I did a little trick that saved me one more spirit. We use cast on critical, and cast on critical's quality gives it reduced reservation, right? So if you use 20% quality, it reduced the reservation by 10%, bringing its reservation down to 91 instead of 90, right? And then you have to have 441 spirit. But if you use it something with 23% quality, then the reservation goes down to 90, right? That's why I need 440 and not 441. And so the thing is, you might find this laughable, right? One spirit. But the thing is, guys, we are really cutting it very, very close, and saving that one spirit might matter, because everything gives us a fixed amount of spirit. This is the only variable one, and being able to accept an alpha soul that gives you one spirit less sometimes makes a difference. And let me go over, this is not actually part of this video, but let me just go over it because I had to discuss it already. What do we spend that 440 spirit on? 90 goes to cast on critical, 100 goes to cast on elemental ailment, 30 goes to siphon elements, that's 220, 100 goes to trinity, that's 320, blink, let me get later on, mana remnant, that's another 30, that's 350, and elemental conflux, that replaces blink most of the time, that's 410. And the final piece of the puzzle, and that's why I said 410 is okay, mysticism gives us a 30 spirit cost, while giving us 40% more spell damage, which is pretty nice. And we have some other spirit scaling here in the Threaded Light and Grip of Kulemax, so getting to 440 is useful, but if you can go 410, that's also fine. Blink and Elemental Conflux are interchanged for mapping and bossing. Yeah, this is becoming the build guide. Let me just stop here and let me give you the budget, right? Because it's not budget actually, right? It's just cheaper than, the Decadent version with, what's the name? Against the Darkness. Sorry, it's a little bit late. So let me just go over it. So guys, you do not do these shenanigans, right? You equip 2 nice jewels in peace. You do not waste these 6 points. And what you go for is not here actually. What you go for is, it's sold. What you go for is a Palm of the Dreamer instead of this Threaded Light. So this Threaded Light gives us insane amounts of damage because we have insane amounts of spirit. But yeah, what we get from the Triple Grand Spectrum and from Against the Darkness, it can be matched by Palm of the Dreamer. So Palm of the Dreamer, let me find one for us here. What's going on? Okay, just find one for us so I can show it to you. Yeah, that item has been gaining value fast, by the way. Yeah, it's not really very cheap. So you go for this one. So this is a great item, guys. First of all, it gives us 27% extra chaos damage, which is decent damage. But keep in mind that chaos damage as extra is not on the same value with the others. Why? Because it does not benefit from elemental damage bonuses. It does not benefit from Rakiata's flow if you are using that. If it does not benefit from specific elemental type bonuses, right? So there's that, but still, of course, it's mighty good damage. And because we are using Adonias with Pinnacle of Power and Spark, skill effect duration is also great. Dreaming Gloomshine is a very nice mapping ability. It's the Skull Shrine. When you kill an enemy, they explode and they deal 25% of their HP to enemies nearby, so you can cause a chain reaction upon killing them. You get some all attributes to make your life easier, and on top of all of this, it gives you a very nice aura that gives you chaos resistance at, I can't see it right, at 18 level it gives you something like 25% or something like that. At 19 it gives you 33%. And what most people miss, I did a specific video for this because so this guy is selling stuff that is worth hundreds of divine and none of his items have quality, right? And thing is, when you do quality on this item, it gives you a whopping 6% chaos resistance. Yeah, this is something that I'm very much in the dark at. And you have to do a rabbit talisman on it, which gives you further 10% spirit. And when you get that 110, it actually matches what the Triple Grand Spectrum and Against the Darkness gives you, and you have no need of that. But this is going to be a massive damage loss, right? Losing out on this item. Let me just show you how much it makes a difference. So just as a reference, take a look at my Spark, 18k, 300% increased damage from this one item. Yeah, and obviously the Palm of the Dreamer gives us damage as well, but nothing near this, right? So that's why we want to do this. This is the final step in the build. This is the thing that you do last. So yeah, that's about it, guys. That's how we use our spirit, and that's how we obtain our spirit. And yeah, we'll see each other in another video based on this character. And good night. Bye bye.